Pete.
Hi, how are you doing, Phil? Good to hear from you.
Yeah, you too. So I'm wondering, what are you finding the most common pain or worry points for your customers?
Well, I think the adoption for NMEA 2000 is still a little bit slower than what we'd anticipate. I mean, based on what we know, and installing it is just so much simpler than 0.83. Sharing data across the network is just so much simpler with NMEA 2000. But it seems like there's still a lot of hesitation to really go all in for NEMA 2000. And I think part of that is in the commercial market, the workboat market. There's a lot of good functioning equipment out there, so it's kind of hard for people to justify, tearing everything out of a boat and moving over to NEMA 2000 when they have perfectly good NMEA 0183 equipment left on board. A lot of times it's not time to retire that piece of equipment, but they want the advantages of something new. And as you know, most every MFD or chart plotter out there now is kind of baseline on NEMA 2000. There's some 0183 capability, but all the good features fall under the NMEA 2000 side of that. So
yeah, and I guess that's why we're seeing such a take up of the NGW product.
Yes, exactly. And that's one of the things, that we're so proud of is representing the Actisense line, is that there's so many solutions that kind of bridge that gap for them. And we try to convey that to workboat. It's different. I think workboat is clearly different than the recreational market. Recreational market, I mean, they're not against tearing a boat out. It's kind of play money. I hate to say it that way, but sometimes it ends up being, more like a hobby. But in the commercial market, this is somebody's living. This is money that they put into that vessel, is money they're not putting into their crew or to the maintenance of the vessel, or maybe things that they deem more important. But items like the NGW1 really allow them to bridge the gap. So now you have a method of bringing NEMA 2000 onto that vessel and salvaging all that perfectly good 0183 data that's already on the boat. Yeah. But of course, huge advantage for them is once they do go to NEMA 2000, there's so much better monitoring available. Engine monitoring, for instance, temperature monitoring, live well monitoring. I mean, so many areas can be monitored over NEMA 2000 that weren't even available in 0183. So. And you guys do a really good job of giving them those solutions. So.
Sure. I mean, I guess you see a lot of the professional MFDs that go onto workboats have still got NEMA 183 capability, but are you seeing NEMA 2000 going into those MFDs much more now? I mean, I guess people like Furuno have obviously led the way there.
Yeah, I think really every MFD, I can't think of one now that even things that are in the sort of commercial end of the market. Some of the bigger MFDs that are designed for good navigation all have NMEA 2000 standard. I mean, there are some commercial machines that don't have that in them. Some of the commercial Furuno machines are starting to migrate that direction. But for the most part, most standard MFDs that we're seeing, and a lot of commercial boats have a mix of MFDs. They may have some more modern and some early, and again, items like the NGW1 allow them to bridge the gap between the two. So now those two MFDs can essentially communicate, even though they're from different generations. So we are seeing, the adoption of NMEA 2000 is slow, but yet the equipment all has a capability. AIS, I mean, there's not too many AIS units out there that don't have some NEMA 2000 capability as well. And that's another big factor, is being able to share that with existing plotters. So.
And you think there's any issues these days with coexisting networks with NEMA 183 and NMEA 2000 on the same boat?
I don't think so. I mean, every once in a while we see certain things in conversions where, a manufacturer's electronics is looking for a certain sentence or structure, and maybe that structure is slightly different. I mean, again, kudos to Actisense for always updating that software and making that. I mean, you guys are just always up to the challenge. If there is something missing from a sentence, just seems like we, when we contact you or your support team, they're like, oh yeah, we're on that, it's already happening. So I think that's really helping bridge that gap. And, we're all learning from this as we go, and nobody knows all the requirements for every industry until you run into it. So.
Yeah, it's hard to believe we brought out our product 10 years ago now, or the original NGW line. So it's had quite a few software updates over that time.
Yeah, it's really
obviously the standards developed.
What's really interesting about that too, though, is the hardware itself really hasn't needed to evolve. I mean, 10 years ago when you introduced that product, it was groundbreaking. It's still groundbreaking. I mean, it's pretty neat to see that the software layer has changed and firmware has evolved, but the hardware is essentially the same and works just as well as it did back then in
Yeah.
all the modern products that we're running into today. So
Yeah, well, we're still very pleased to keep supporting that product, and we've obviously over the years we've given people free software updates for all of that time. Even if you had the original unit, you can still get software updates for that. So that's kind of been a principle of ours because the standards are moving so fast.
yeah.
You have to keep up to date.
Yeah, and commercial and recreational both. I mean, the EMU1 is another just an amazing gateway product. Is that again, you got a commercial boat, and they sort of feel like maybe their hands forced into integrating some NMEA 2000. They have a single MFD and need to have it, but once they get that bug, then they realize, wow, all my engine data can be monitored right on my MFD. All my warnings can show up right on my MFD screen. I mean, there's just such huge advantage to that. So things like the EMU1 really become, I think the NGW can be a gateway product, literally, no pun intended, to opening up avenues to bring engine data in and temperature monitoring that just wasn't capable of being monitored, transmission data and stuff. And that's so important to a commercial vessel, really is. Rudder angle, things like that are just so important to a commercial vessel. And the other thing I think that NMEA 2000 lends itself to doing some self-install. I mean, a complex installation, you'd obviously want a technician on board, but to add a simple device, W2K is literally like just plugging in a new T and adding it to the network. I mean, you have to understand your network, but I'm saying the installation time for NMEA 2000 is just so much simpler. I mean, it eliminates oftentimes having to put a multiplexer in the network here to add a new device. So some of this can be done, by the boat and crew. So.
Yeah. So both Actisense and Gemeco are very much involved with the NMEA. Do you think that there's still a job to do there with particularly with the workboat market to do some education of NMEA 2000 adoption that would help
Absolutely.
them?
I do. I think I think it's something that there's always hesitation when there's a new technology. And again, when I look at the helm of my boat and I'm going, wow, I have thousands of dollars worth of equipment here and it's all still working. There's some advantages to this new stuff, but boy, it's really hard to weigh that. And I think educating people on the fact, first of all, that you don't need to scrap all the old to go to new. And then also the advantages to moving to the new and that hybrid approach where you sort of marry the two technologies together and how simple it is. I mean, the languages are so different, but the parameters that can be monitored, digital switching over NMEA 2000, all the things that can be accomplished with NMEA 2000, I think that is going to take some additional education. I think people need a resource like us. I mean, I'm bragging a little bit about Gemeco, but we love this stuff. We're kind of technology nerds. And obviously, representing the Actisense brand, we try to represent the best brands in the business, but not only just represent them, understand them. And I think that's a big advantage for somebody working with us is that, I'm blowing my own horn here, but when a technician comes to us and says, hey, I've got this problem I need to solve, we know how to solve it. It's not just about looking at a catalog.
Well, I think that's why we appreciate you so much at Gemeco, because you've got that great customer service and you really have a depth of technical knowledge. You really understand our products. You really understand the niche that you're in and how to solve problems for customers. I mean, can you give an example of how that might that work with a workboat customer coming to you to learn a little bit?
Well, it's interesting you say that about us because we do like to solve problems, but I kind of look at the Actisense brand overall. I mean, when you look at your product line, every one of them is a solution. It's not something that you created because it would be fun to have. It's because there was a problem in the market and there was an issue, and here's a good way to solve it. And it's just interesting. I think you probably take that a little bit for granted because you guys, just look at it but that's the same with us, is that when a customer comes to us, whether it be a boat owner or a technician, they say, listen, I've got this issue and I'm trying to figure it out. How do I make this work with that? And that's really our niche, is that we know all the brands out there. We know all the OEMs out there. We have relationships with them all. So we're really good at saying, okay, I need this Raymarine to communicate with this Furuno when normally they just don't network together. I need this old Cytex radar to be able to, send or receive data, or an AIS to receive data on an 0183 sentence that I only have NMEA 2000. So, that's kind of what we're good at. And that's it. I think it's really, we're sort of a solutions provider. We sell the product, of course, but I think we support it more than we sell it. Like that's our strength, I should say. So
obviously the NGW has made quite a big impression on Gemeco.
Oh, absolutely.
So what other items of Actisense kit, apart from the EMU as well that we've already mentioned,
Sure.
are there any other pieces of kit that you think have made a real difference to the market?
Oh, absolutely. There's lots of. I think the W2K1 is a great example of that. I mean, we have so many technicians that now have that as a standard diagnostic tool. They'll either put it up permanently on a boat and just be able to have the customer send data off of it, or they'll drop it on a vessel when they need to do some monitoring and they can't be there all the time. And that's such a it's such a cool sort of understated tool. I mean, it's not a very expensive tool, but yet the features that it has the capability have, again, that's our job, is to explain to people how beneficial a product like that can be. I mean, truly, that should be something that every technician and every boat owner has. We have a tug fleet owner that we introduced one of them to. He ended up putting all 10 of his vessels, and they stay there permanently, because he said, I never know when a system's going to glitch, but now I'm constantly recording in the background. So if it glitches at 2:30 tomorrow afternoon, my captain tells me at 2:30, I can go back and have somebody analyze the log or look at them myself. And now I know what happened at 2:30 in the afternoon. So it's not even, it's being proactive, not reactive. And that's a simple, again, understated tool. People don't even realize, I feel like our job is to make people realize how powerful something that simple can be. But as far as, other items, I mean, I think it goes without saying that, cables and connectors, that's a busy market. I mean, everybody probably thought Actisense was crazy when they got into the cable and connector market. But what you did was you did it completely different. The simplest little thing, like the way a T has 2 bolt holes, so the alignment is good. It stands off, from wherever it's mounted, it stands off. So I can go ahead and mount all my T connectors and then connect inner cables. Those simple things that just make it, so much more appealing to somebody to install that product line. The finger grip, I mean, all those little tiny details, that's just your signature, is that you don't miss the details. You guys always seem to have a really good feel for what's coming, or a lot of times, honestly, solving problems before we even recognize them as a problem. So, what do you see as sort of the future? Where do you see things going in the market?
Yeah, well, I think we'll be adding a lot more software to some of our products. So I think you were mentioning the W2K just now.
Sure.
So the W2K in itself is quite a nice self-contained product, and out of the box, obviously, it's got the data logger built in, so it can do a full CAN log of everything that's going on in your NMEA 2000 bus. But equally, you can then use the same product to stream the data to a navigation app like the Navionics app, or Nobletech, or whichever product you're using. So it's an incredibly valuable product, because it's doing 2 or 3 things in one. But there's so much extra capacity in that product for us to add extra features. So we are looking at adding some further diagnostic tools to that product, so it can continuously monitor things on your boat, and then give you warnings, so you can basically connect to different apps or to different web services and things, and find out what's going on your boat. So you can find events happen on the NMEA 2000 bus, and it will warn you about those events. So essentially, you've got something they're monitoring all the time, while also giving you all of these extra great features straight out of the box. So it can do so many things in one product. It's been a long time coming, but I think the exciting thing there is this integration of the NMEA 2000 technology, and potentially on larger commercial vessels, the ability to run that OneNet standard over what they often have is a standard Ethernet bus on some of the larger workboats and commercial vessels. So then you can start to actually integrate, convert from the NMEA 183 onto the OneNet, get that on the Ethernet backbone, have that compatible with some of the larger pieces of equipment that only have NMEA 183 and Ethernet connectivity, like ECDIS systems and so on. So the future is there to actually get those commercial pieces of equipment really working with what is essentially NMEA 2000 data technology, but running at a much faster, up to 10 gigabit backbone. So the sky's the limit there, all the way from radar, video, everything going on all on one bus. So essentially, you'd be able to consider your boat like a mini internet and browse the boat from wherever you are on that boat at any time. So your limitations are not what they are now. So because the NMEA 2000 technology is a great technology, but it's based on what is a fairly sort of proprietary core backbone, which is the CAN bus. And CAN bus is obviously a very reliable means of sending things like throttle data, engine data, and so on around a boat. So it's brilliant for that. But obviously its speed is limited, and standard pieces of equipment like your phone and your iPad and so on don't come with a CAN bus interface. So, but they do come with what is basically a TCP/IP interface. So as soon as you've got OneNet, everything's got access to that backbone data. So it's quite exciting, really, to think that's where the future's going. And you can literally network your boat as a mini internet to the main internet, and there's so many possibilities around that too.
I think that's that's something that people are paying more and more attention to, is the ability to view more data, aggregated data, to be able to compare things and predictive maintenance, if you will, like being able to watch data trending over time, so you can predict potentially a low oil pressure a trend causing problems in the future, or a temperature rising in a certain device, a transmission temperature rising or something like that. And then of course, being able to view that data off the boat, or aggregate that data. If you were a fleet owner and you could just pull up a browser and monitor all 10 of your vessels out there and look for trends, I mean, that's huge. That's really big opportunity for somebody.
Yeah, these are the kind of things where that kind of artificial intelligence, looking at that big data, is more powerful than what you can put onto your own boat. So having that connected to cloud services that can do further data analysis of what you're doing, your fuel consumption, the temperature profile of your engine on a particular day, did it go out of spec, all of these things. Looking for things for preventative maintenance and so on to reduce your costs. You could save yourselves thousands of dollars for a service that only costs hundreds. So it's quite interesting future. You say, well, why the heck does this guy spend so much less on fuel than this guy? And you can work it out, and the computer could tell you, well, this guy does this, and this guy doesn't do this.
Love that throttle.
Yeah.
That's great.
Water skis. That's what the answer is.
Yeah, no doubt in my mind, that Actisense will be leading the way with OneNet products. And that brings me to another point. Just when we think, okay, so the Actisense NMEA 2000 kit, the whole A2K series, cables, connectors, I mean, they're clearly innovative. I mean, that again, you took something that the market was relatively saturated with a lot of different options, and then you just innovated. And then when I think, geez, I can't go any further than that, you come out with a universal terminator, and that was just genius. I mean, seriously, genius. It's one of those things. It's a diagnostic tool. It's we have so many technicians now that have a half a dozen or more of those in their kit, because they don't have to have male, they don't have to have female, they have everything on board. So based on that, you've already set the bar really high, and now you've set it a little higher. What can you tease us with? What maybe new innovations that you have up in that brain of yours that you and your team working on?
Yeah, well, we're looking for solutions in sensor interfacing. So we're looking to extend things like the W2K capability, because obviously we have the W2K now, but there's no reason why we can't now expand that technology to bridge networks, do conversions. So we're looking at things like J1939 conversions. That's clearly where older engines are using that sort of technology to get onto the NMEA 2000 bus. It's a product we haven't got as yet, and there's a few out there, but I think we can do a little bit better than some of those. And actually putting the sense into Actisense, so we're having a little bit more look at sensor technology, what parameters can you measure around a boat. So extending what we've done with the EMU really, and looking at sensing individual tanks and individual trim tab positions and battery voltages, currents and things like that. I think that's somewhere that we can add some value, particularly when you connect it up to things like the W2K and other networking gear, so that you can get that more overall boat monitoring situation going on. And the other thing is to move away so much from PC-based software into app-based software. So we're looking at how we would design an app, an Actisense app that would allow you to configure our products and also other people's products as well. So doing a little bit like NMEA Reader, but actually on your smartphone is a lot more easy. You don't need a cable to connect anymore to the boat. You can just wander around the boat with your phone and configure this, configure that. You can even see, switch that. Oh, the light goes on, switch that off, light goes off. So things like that, all possible with, looking at the way that I know PGM switching can work. So you could literally just walk up to the thing and just test that it's working while you're there, see what its voltage current's like, all of those things. So I think that's definitely going to help people like installers do what they have to do, rather than just sitting there somewhere on the bridge connected to a hardwired canvas connection, which is obviously a little more limiting. So I think that sort of thing is going to happen very quickly now.
An inevitable part of any installation is going to be a consideration for diagnostics. I mean, it just goes without saying that, boats are complicated. It's not like the automotive industry where there's one manufacturer integrating everything and controlling it all. And when you get into a boat, there's a multitude of brands on there. There's a multitude, and even within the NMEA 2000 guidelines, there's some leeway that, can cause some communication challenges for a technician. So one of the things we see technicians really like about Actisense line, but overall in products, is diagnostics and visibility of what's going on. And I think you guys have done just such a great job with that. I mean, that free NMEA Reader software, the toolkit, is just, they're both just amazing tools that you give away, which is cool. The NGT1 is a gateway that's very inexpensive compared to most other brands out there, but it's unbelievably powerful for a lot of reasons. And to be able to do that with a W2K one and bring that to wireless. So again, as you mentioned, you're not tethered now. You can look at it on an iPad or whatever. Just seems like, again, an evolution. You're solving a problem that people may not even realize they hated as much as they hated, but now they're going to be hooked on it. So it's diagnostics in any of your equipment seem to be very powerful. I mean, every time we've ever had to work with customer service, your team is like, well, set a log. Oh, the logging features built right in already. Collect that data, and now you have something to analyze off the boat. So
I think the next, probably the next big thing is the ubiquitous internet on board, and obviously I'd like to be there with the W2K when that happens, because so far people would have a 3G or a 4G link to shore, and they may have an expensive satellite connection on the boat. But obviously, things coming along like the Starlink system and so on, we're actually looking at a time of future in the near future when your boat can be connected to the internet almost anywhere in the world at any time at a reasonable cost. So it will not be costing you the earth, literally, to get into space. You'll be able to, for $100 a month or whatever, or less, you'll be able to actually have a continuous high-speed connection to the internet, which would be fascinating, really, from the point of view that now you could literally VPN to your boat to get a private network, connect your home to your boat, and you could be either literally diagnosing things on the boat from home, or you could give your engineers direct access. If you're a work boat, you could actually have the main office is continuously connected to all the boats. So you're not waiting till it comes back to connect to the Wi-Fi to get that high resolution data.
Sure.
You can get high resolution data live from the boat anywhere in the world. So I think that is the next thing. And products like the W2K on the market are quite exciting because they have that TCP/IP networking capability. So they're already ready to stream that data wherever you are. I mean, I'm already testing it here. I can stream to a W2K at the office from my home and things like that because I VPN to the office and I can get to it. So, if you imagine the office is like the same thing, the boat's connected to our Wi-Fi network. My Wi-Fi network's connected to my home. Mm-hmm. So the whole thing is like one.
Yeah, you've just created a loop. That's great.
So I can talk to our boat in our car park through a W2K from my home, which is 5 or 6 miles away. So you can imagine, because that's the internet, that could be 5,000 or 6,000 miles away. You could keep, high speed link to your boat and continuously see what's going on it. Do you see that NMEA 2000 could actually be a big cost saver for a workboat?
It could be. You know, I think there is certainly a lot to be said for that. I think there's a couple things. Is NMEA 0183 to really get an advanced 0183 network took a very advanced technician. I mean, it's complicated, no way around it. There's a lot you have to know, although once you know that, it's simple. But what we see, I think, is a younger generation of technicians coming in that have really kind of grown up, if you will, with NMEA 2000, have a little less strength than 0183. And certainly installing an 0183 network is far more complicated. I mean, there's home runs for every device. You don't just daisy chain along a network like you can with NMEA 2000.
Yeah.
So one of the things with NMEA 2000, of course, is you can bank things. We can go into an engine room and we can bank all the tanks and engine data, and then you have a single cable run running up to the helm, and then you bank all the communication equipment up there. So there's a lot less complexity in the physical installation with NMEA 2000.
Yeah.
Expansion, I mean, I think the whole thing of NMEA 2000 is so easy to expand. You just start dropping T's, and as long as you've got your voltage requirements and things like that handled, you know, it's much easier to upgrade. So
yeah, you're absolutely right there. And I think I think the ongoing costs are so much lower as well. Like you say, it's easier to expand, but it's also easier to diagnose, because if you log that network, you can instantly see whether a device is falling in and out of the network. Because if you look at a product like our EBL reader software that's available free on our website, you can take that log of that boat from a W2K or an NGT, and you can see message by message whether a product has got a problem and whether it's coming and going. So by analyzing that log data, you could see, are there gaps in that data? Are there times when that product isn't giving the right information? Is a particular GPS coming in and out? And with a NMEA 183 system, that is incredibly difficult to diagnose that kind of problem, and it's incredibly costly in terms of engineer time.
Yeah, and there really aren't a lot of technicians that have that knowledge. I mean, I can tell you, dozens and dozens of technicians that can look at a NMEA 2000 data string and make some sense out of it almost immediately. 0183 is much more challenging. You really have to have, some knowledge, and it's, then you're talking about the bridging of things. So now they've got to know both protocols, and we just don't see a lot of that in the market. So I think NMEA 2000's, far better. I think the diagnostics, and again, you guys have been leading the way with that, is the diagnostics in almost any piece of equipment that Actisense offers are very powerful. They're in the background, so they're not in your face. It's not a tool. It's a device. But when you need it to become that diagnostic tool, it's already there. So it's just very well thought out. And again, I mentioned the W2K is just such a great, sort of example of that. Is that when that came out and you first introduced that to us, we were like, wow, great, a Wi-Fi gateway, and it does data logging. That's just a natural addition. So keep up the good work there. That really is a big part of it.
I think we're a little ahead of our time there, because every time I tell people, they say it does all of that.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I think the message hasn't got out there yet. We need to start
Totally agree.
Start shouting it out.
Yep, I agree. And that's the same with any product. And I feel like that's our job as a distributor, is that there's a lot of products that, from an outward face, they seem to solve one problem or be a solution. But then when you start looking at the Actisense line and what's in the background of that, that's, all this free added value. EBL reader is another example of that, is to be able to take that data and convert that data to something that, we can put into an Excel spreadsheet and manipulate in any way. I can sort by PGN, I can sort by issue, I can sort by error message, anything, can be done with that. And again, I'm not paying you to convert data for me. I have control over my data. I can do the analytics myself because you gave me a free tool. So, I think things like that are just sort of I don't want to say misunderstood. I mean, I think we just need to make people aware of what capabilities and what value added is in these products, because again, the W2K, even if a customer says, well, I don't really need Wi-Fi on board currently, I'm not quite there yet. Just as a diagnostic tool, it's incredibly inexpensive for a data logger. I mean, compared to what other items are on the market, I mean, it's just a no-brainer. Everybody should have one of those in their toolbox. This has been great. I always enjoy, speaking with you and learning about what the next generation of products will look like. And, the cool thing is the current generation is always amazing. So keep up the great work to you and your team. And
Thank you.
we look forward to supporting Actisense and proudly, waving the Actisense banner for years to come.